want to thank everyone for joining us. Welcome to the National Urban League Jobs Network Career Development Series. We're kicking it off with Bert Gervais. He's one of our excellent presenters who's going to be discussing with us how to utilize mentors in your career. Bert came to us through a colleague, Jody Brockington of Niara Consulting. We want to give a shout out to Jody and give an overview of just why we think Bert is so amazing. Bert comes, according to entrepreneurship.com, he's a power mentor, which we totally agree with. USA Today says he's one of the top young leaders in the country. As a guest Forbes columnist, he has collaborated with hit ABC show Shark Tank, Google, and the White House, all before the age of 30. As a mentor guy, as he's known across the nation, he's the #1 speaker on mentorship and teaching career-ready young adults to build relationships that build dreams. He rose from humble beginnings to become the #1 best-selling author of Who's in Your Top Hive. From his roots as a young boy in Haiti with limited needs, Bert came to America, cliche but true, and quickly realized the value of seizing opportunities. After struggling with childhood battles with asthma and scoliosis, he pushed forward with his ambitions in sports and business. Bert draws from his experience as a chief mentor officer of his consulting company, Success Mentor Education, as well as his time as a NCAA Division I football player. He has spoken to over 50,000 people in 6 countries. So please help us give him an Urban League welcome to the mentor guy, Bert Gervais. Bert, I'm going to send it over to you, and you can take control. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you so much, Dawn, for the introduction, and thank you to the National Urban League for organizing this digital series and for all the value that you provide for your members. So really happy, and thank you also, Jody, for being really instrumental to making this happen. So happy to be here. And before I started, I just wanted to bring your attention to something. So as we talked during the presentation, this is going to actually be interactive. So feel free to ask questions. I'll be able to hear your questions. Not hear your questions, but I'll be able to read them. And also, there's going to be a hashtag that I point out, so feel free to tweet. I know that we'll be responding to questions and inquiries on Twitter and Facebook. So I actually want to start with a story. So I was in India a couple years back, and I was doing a presentation. So we got there a couple weeks early, and so we're with the team, and we wanted to go visit this holy land called Vrindavan. It's got several temples, and we heard a lot of really cool things about Vrindavan. And in our travels to this area, 2 things happened. One, I had something that happened where I was in fear for my life. I was absolutely terrified. And 2, I realized the importance of mentorship. And here's how those 2 things connected. So we wake up at 8 in the morning, and we have to drive through this town. And I don't know if anyone is familiar with weather or you ever watch National Geographic, but India is a hot country. Where we were was at the top of the mountain, so it was very cold. So whenever you're having a warm front that pushes up to a cold area, what do you guys think happened? Let you think about that for a second. Anyone who said fog, ding, 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 you are correct. The answer is fog. And it was crazy fog, like Stephen King's scary movie, I Can't See Anything fog. And we have a driver named Johnny, and Johnny is just cruising through this fog. And I'm looking at my team. It's us, our map, Johnny, 3 feet in front of us, because as far as we can see, in the fog, right? And the whole time, Johnny is driving, and there's cows and motorcycles coming in front of the car. I'm thinking, wow, I'm looking at my team, looking at our map, looking at Johnny 3 feet in front of us. Johnny looks back, and he says, no fear of collision, no fear of collision. And I think, for who? I'm scared out of my mind. And so we ended up, I don't know how, by the grace of God, getting to our destination, getting through the fog. And one of the things that I realized was that Johnny never looked at the map. And the reason he never looked at the map was because he knew the terrain in the area so well that even in an area where a map or GPS wouldn't work, he was still able to navigate us. And I think that's the best metaphor for a mentor, because And I'm curious too, and we can do a quick poll. You guys can answer this question. I don't know how many folks on this call are job seekers versus how many actually are currently employed in a job. But whichever bucket you're part of, there's going to be a part where you're going to reach a point in your career where the map is not going to matter. I know a lot of times we go to school and we're told, here's our 3 to 5 year plan, here's our checklist, and things change so rapidly. It's just great to have those folks in our corner who, even if there's a foggy situation, we can see them beyond the map. So I think that's a great metaphor for mentorship, and I think that's going to help guide our discussion. So let me first kind of kick off, tell you guys a bit about me. So what I do with Success Mentor Education, we help organizations set up mentor programs on the corporate level, but we've been studying how mentor-mentee relationships work for over 5 years. We've worked with over 50,000 people in 6 countries, and so something I'm deeply passionate about. So, and by the way, you see the Twitter hashtag there. So if you guys do have a comment that you want to share, please at Bert Gervais and hashtag Jobs for All. So what I wanted to do today is I want to talk to you a little bit about what are the mindsets that actually make it easy to find a mentor. I think sometimes we think about this in a way where, a lot of people say, well, how do I find a mentor? And I believe that you have to become the person that attracts a mentor. There's a really good quote by Sheryl Sandberg in the book Lean In. She says that most people think, you get a mentor and you'll excel, but the way it actually works is once you excel, you find a mentor. And so we're going to talk to you about how to set yourself up to attract that dream mentor. So, but I want to start with the exercise. And wait, I think I'm seeing a question here. Oh, great. So, cool. We got a little poll. So it looks like the majority of the audience is currently job seeking. So that's great. So that's going to help me keep everything relevant for you. So what you'll be excited to know for the job seekers who are on the call is whether you're finding a mentor to get a job, and I'm going to give you some examples of how that works, or once you've landed a job and you're utilizing mentors, some interesting things that you want to know about why it's important to have mentors and why I've spent so much time studying. So a couple cool facts. Folks with mentors, employees with mentors, are 5 times more likely to be promoted than their counterparts who don't have mentors. On average, this is exciting, folks with mentors make $5,000 to $22,000 more annually over their career when they are paired up with mentors versus those who are not paired up with mentors. And we find this all the time. There's just higher job satisfaction versus peers. But those are the numbers. But I want to tell you, so I was in Starbucks, and I was overhearing a conversation between a mentor and a mentee. And I know that's kind of creepy, but it's just when you're a researcher, you get excited about these things. But the mentor said something that I thought was beautiful. You could tell the mentee wasn't 100% confident yet. I think he was applying for a job. And the mentor said, you know what? You're like a bottle of champagne. I just want to take the cork off. You're so much more than you think you are. And you can see the visible shift in this mentee's body language. You can see the increase in confidence. And so one of the first things to keep in mind about mentors is that, it's 50% about the knowledge and the advice that you can get, and 50% about the emotional confidence. So when you reach out to your mentors, one of the first things you want to think about is not just finding someone who has answers, but someone who has the ability to inspire that confidence in you. I think that's one of the best parts about mentors. And my personal definition of a mentor is someone who helps draw out the inner genius that's inside of you already. So, but let's first ask a question to the audience. So I want to do an activity. We're going to skip this step. We're going to get back to this, called values voting. So the way we're going to do this, I'm going to ask you guys a question, and if you agree, just type your name, you agree, and then why you agree. If you disagree, type your name, you disagree, and why you disagree. So the question is this, or the statement is this. The statement is, the principal recipient of the benefits of mentoring are always flow from the mentor to the mentee. So basically the statement is, do you believe that the person that most benefits from mentoring is the mentee? And that's how it flows. So let's get some comments here. So I'll give you guys a couple seconds. And if you disagree, put just a line. I'm seeing some folks chiming in. Just put your name and the answer, but also just why you disagree. Okay, Arlene is saying, I disagree because the mentor also receives benefits from the relationship. Okay. I'm getting a disagree because I believe our relationship should be mutually beneficial by Carmen. Let's get, for devil's advocate, let's get an agree. Does anybody agree? Okay, Arthur Smith said the mentee benefits. Okay, so most people think that so most people are disagreeing. They're saying that in the beginning it may appear to be that way, but at the end of it all, the mentor can benefit also. Okay, so let's look at that a little bit. I'm going to ask you a second statement, and I want to get your feedback. So let me know if you agree or disagree with the statement. My mentor is older, more experienced, and wiser, so I expect them to always have the right answer to my question. Do you guys agree or disagree with that? By the way, I want to acknowledge Stephanie Jerger for having a very well thought out answer. So do you guys disagree from the next statement? The next statement is, my mentor is older, more experienced, and so I expect them to always have the right answer to my question. Okay. So Michaela, I have no idea if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, so I apologize. Says disagree. Once again, they're learning just like we are. Zia says disagree. No one is right all the time. Okay, so we tend to have a little bit of diversity of thought here. So I'm going to tell you a story about just how folks the paradigm that folks used to look at mentors, and it looks like you guys are starting to be part of that shift. So most people, when they think about a mentor relationship, they think about Harry Potter, right? And what do I mean by that? So most people think, Harry Potter, he's got this one Dumbledore who's, and I don't know if you've read the books, but it's a pretty, famous reference. But Dumbledore just waves his magic wand around and just things start happening for Harry, right? So the career metaphor would be, you've got this one person grooming you in a company, and then now you're getting promotions and introductions to senior partners. And most people think that's actually how it works. Not on this call, because you guys seem to disagree with the statement. But it's shifted, and I want to explain the shift so you can have a context for our call. So it's no longer that way. It's more like the Verizon guy, right? It's more about having a network. So the ideal mentor is really 4 to 5 people at different areas in the corporate ladder, right? And by the way, I don't know why this is random, but every time I see the cancel you can't do sign, I think of Ghostbusters. So. But, to give you a little bit of example of how this works, why it's important to have many mentors, this is me kind of growing up in Haiti. And so this is me today, and you don't just wake up in a Cosby sweater and pink socks and a best-selling book in a consulting company that works with Fortune 500 companies. There's different people that help you along the way. So I'm going to share with you a couple different mentors that I've had and why I use the Verizon having a network of mentors example. So one of my first mentors was a professor. His name is Angelo Mastrangelo, one of the top business professors in the United States as ranked by CNN Business. And he was instrumental because he helped me find my purpose. And literally his give to me was he helped me develop into the person I am today. I was in college, and I wanted to be a lawyer. I was really living my parents' dream. And speaking to him, he actually helped me get out of my political science classes and get into business classes, even though it was late in the game. I think I was a junior or senior. And he got me into one of his classes. I won a business plan competition, which he helped me with, and that really got me into business. This other gentleman is Michael Simmons. He has a very prestigious organization called Impact that supports entrepreneurship. I traveled around with him for 3 years, and he really helped me develop my professionalism. And he's one of the reasons why I'm doing workshops and training today. And he's only a couple years older than me, so you're going to see there's some variations in terms of age, gender of my different mentors, and I'll explain to you why these different perspectives are important. Another mentor that I had was, this is John Hines. He actually coached me on how to write my book. He was a best-selling author. When I met him, he's the person who inspired me to write my book on mentorship. And he's also a life mentor. So, we've got kind of this Mufasa professor mentor. We've got the Step Ahead mentor who's a couple of years ahead of me. Then we have a life mentor with a little bit more breadth of experience. And we talk a lot about personal development. We'll read a book together and have dinner and talk about what we learned. And then lastly, I have an expert mentor. So this is Dina. She's worked with a lot of experts for branding, positioning, even worked with celebrities. She's actually the one who inspired me to, along with Mike actually, to start writing for Forbes. And she's one of the reasons why I got my first Forbes article published, and now I'm doing a series. So what's important here is that mentors take different shapes and sizes, and it's not about finding that one Harry Potter mentor. It's about finding different types of mentors. So what I want to do right now is I just want to ask really quickly, and you guys can use the chat feature. Can you guys share some examples where you've had mentors that were maybe close in age, older in age, or any mentors that fit this framework? Maybe they were just specifically an expert in one area. Maybe they were a life mentor. Can someone give an example of a mentor that they've had? And I'll wait for you guys to chime in.
So, Bert, as those continue to come in, looks like the first one is from Gary, who explains that he has had a mentor for several years, a mentor that's several years older, but has been in the industry a long time. And a lot more are coming in as well. Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Right. So Nikki said I had a mentor for my job. She's about 10, 12 years older than me. She helped me when I needed to be trained in new responsibilities. She's been doing it for some years and really helped me in my previous position to help me get where I am today. Lakeisha said I have a mentor 3 decades my senior and is a male. I also have a mentor that is a few years younger than me and is a female. Both have helped me grow in my professional life and my community involvement. So as you can see, I think sometimes we get boxed into the idea of a mentor that they definitely have to be much older than us, that they have to fit a certain demographic, or maybe they have to be, the same gender as us. And, that's not true. Mentors can come in different shapes and sizes. And what's more important, and I'm going to be writing an article about this, a lot of people think, well, I have to find a mentor that looks like me or is my same gender. And what's actually more important is shared values and deeper similarities. So maybe you have a similar perspective on volunteering, or maybe you have similar family values. So surface values matter when you initially meet, but the deeper values are actually what matters in a long-lasting relationship. So thank you, folks, for sharing. So I'm going to share with you some mindsets. How do you become the type of person that attracts mentors? So one of the first things is, in a mentor relationship, you want to act like a host and not a guest. So what do I mean by that? So at a dinner party, who sets the agenda? Who says, here's what we're having for dinner, here's the appetizer, the host, or the guest? It's the host, right? Usually the guest just consumes. And, that's the person that comes through. You see the person in the back eating all the chips. So you don't want to be the person in the back eating all the chips in a mentor relationship. You want to be the host. So what do I mean by that? So, for example, how can you set the agenda? So one great way is, let's say you're reaching out to a mentor, and you want that mentor to give you an introduction to someone in the company you want to work for. Instead of letting them guess why they should introduce you or how you're qualified, write that email up front. Say, I like this introduction. Here are 3 reasons why I think the introduction makes sense. and here's a forward-ready email that you can copy and paste to introduce me to that person. Or another example you can be of being a host instead of a guest is if you reach out to a mentor and you want to set some time, don't say, hey, can you meet in March? Say something like, hey, here are 3 dates that I'm available to meet. Do any of these days work between 11 and 2? I'm happy to work around your schedule. So you're making it easier for the mentor to help you. You're making it easier for the mentor to help you. So that's called acting like a host and not a guest. So one of the easiest ways to prepare yourself for a mentor relationship, and I think a lot of people focus on what happens when you get the mentor. I think there's not enough focus on the pre-work. Is what I call the gap. And the gap is very simple. It's called give, ask, plan. So you basically want to think about when you have a mentor, how do I give to this person? How do I give in this relationship? Ask is simply, what is your specific ask? Here's what a mentor wants to know. A mentor wants to know, what do you need from me? How long is it going to take? And what is it about my specific expertise that makes me qualified to help you? Those are the 3 things that they want to know, and you want to be able to answer that with your gap plan. So plan is whatever project that you want to work with your mentor, and I'll talk to you about why the word project is important in a second. You want to have a timeline and how you plan to get there. So I'll give you an example of a case scenario. So let's everyone take a second to read this case scenario. Well, I'm going to read it. I mean, you can read it along with me. So Shanna and Beverly first met at an Urban League National Conference and kept in touch, periodically sending her relevant articles and updates. Before Shanna applied to IDEO, the famous product designing consultancy, she asked Beverly, a former IDEO employee, what the company would perceive as her biggest weakness. Her answer, are you actually creative? Shanna panicked as she realized she didn't have a portfolio and that she came from supply chain. Beverly encouraged her to still apply, but first think through the way she could demonstrate her creativity beyond a resume. Result, instead of filling out their application, I decided to make a book, Shanna shared. I spent 10 hours in 4 different airport baggage claims, interviewed 23 people, and put together a book on Snapfish about how I would improve baggage claims. I got the internship. So I'm going to go back out to the audience. So after reading this case scenario, this is based on a real story, by the way, how did Shanna use the gap plan on her mentor?
From Michaela Allen, she saw the give in terms of staying in contact, and she saw the ask in terms of Shanna asking for advice, and Valerie responded, as well as Miss Cameron Curry. Do you see those there?
Yep, I see that. So Shanna presented information about her experience, and then she presented information to back up her claim. Great. So she crafted a plan based on Beverly's advice. Right. So, and someone Arlene actually got to ask perfect, which is she asked her mentor specific questions about her perceived weakness, which is a very subtle question to ask, but a great question to ask as a job seeker is you imagine having that upfront knowledge about the culture and what they're going to ask you. And I think that's why it's beneficial to have a mentor going into a job seeking situation. But I want to break down this scenario a little bit. So one of the things that I think is really important is, so Shanna met Beverly at a conference, but you see that they kept in touch, and she would send her relevant articles in her industry before Shanna ever asked for anything. One of the things that I want you to think about whenever you make any connection is the first person to ask for something in a relationship is in second place. And so when you meet folks, your first inclination should be, how can I give to this person? And a lot of times we think, well, what can I do? They're an experienced professional, they've got all these accolades. But even in this situation, Shanna was, it's implied that she was younger, getting out of college, and that Beverly was more experienced. She was just sending her relevant articles in her industry. There's a lot of programs where, you hear a lot about reverse mentoring now, where a lot of senior professionals are tapping into younger junior professionals to understand social media, or maybe they want to know what's trending. A lot of design firms are doing that, right? Because it's their business to know what's trending. So what I want folks to think about is, what are some ways that you can give in a mentor relationship when you first meet them? So I know I'm going to go into the next, this will come up in our next scenario, but in this previous scenario, I think what's important to take away was the ask was very specific and related to Beverly's experience. Beverly had previously worked at IDEO. She'd be the best person to ask about the culture of the company. She wasn't asking someone who worked in marketing. She asked someone who previously worked in IDEO, right? And her plan was, I need to come up with a plan to demonstrate my creativity beyond my resume. And so that was the plan. They probably set up a timeline for that, and what she ended up executing was the book. So that was a great example. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between a mentor and a sponsor, because this comes up a lot, and I think we should know the context for this, because if you're looking for folks to advocate for you, which it wasn't exactly advocacy in the last example, but in the next example we're going to talk about, there is. So the big difference between a mentor and a sponsor is, I want you to think about it this way. A mentor, remember I told you, is someone who has knowledge and experience that they can share with you. They also give you emotional confidence. But it's really a developmental relationship. They're there to help you develop, but the key difference is they are not a stakeholder. A sponsor is a stakeholder. So what do I mean by that? A stakeholder means I put my neck out on the line for you. It means I advocate for you. I put my good name before I recommend you to somewhere, right? So in a sponsor, for them to put their neck out, and the reason it's important is they're usually a senior manager, someone with influence, someone who can protect their mentee from negative publicity, from office politics, someone who can be sitting in the room at the table when the promotion discussion is happening. So if the person is not at the room when that conversation is happening, they're probably not a sponsor, they're probably a mentor. So you can look at this slide for the key differences. When you review this, the big thing to keep in mind is that a sponsor is a stakeholder and a mentor is there to help you develop. So I want to give you a second scenario to help you understand that. So read along with me. I'm going to read this. So Leslie Chan, a prominent managing director for a private equity firm, was the first person Derek worked for 3 years ago. Back then, he was an ambitious analyst for a major financial services company. Although they had not communicated in a while, he recently left his firm very confident that Leslie would recommend him for a vice president position at a rival firm. Her words in the meeting sunk him. I'm not ready to introduce you to my partners for an interview. You were good when you worked for me, but I'm not sure you ever reached the plateau of greatness you were capable of. A dejected Derek left the meeting confused. In his mind, it was impossible that he had not grown in the 4 years since he last worked for Leslie. So, give you guys a second to process that for a second. So the question that I want to talk to you about this specific scenario is, what do you think Derek could have done differently in this relationship? What could have Derek done differently so he would not be surprised? It looks like he was going into this meeting with a mentor, who's really actually a sponsor in this case. But he didn't get what he wanted. So what do you think he could have done differently? And two, what was different about Leslie Chan's role versus the mentor in the previous example? So we're getting some... All right, so someone just chimed in. LZ, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, said Derek should have kept up regular contact with Leslie. Okay, so let's talk about that. So one of the things Derek is surprised at is, that Leslie has no idea how much he's grown in the last 4 years. But no one has any idea outside of him, inside of his mind, how much he's grown unless he's actually shared that. So one of the things that I hear a lot. There's a lot of articles that say, you know what, skip the mentor, go straight for the sponsor, go straight for somebody who can hook you up. And I don't think you can actually skip that step. You have to nurture these relationships if you want someone to be a sponsor. I once heard, this type of example, I once heard someone compare it to like a booty call. So basically, Derek, it's a booty call. He's only reaching out when he needs a promotion, an introduction, some type of help, but he's not keeping in contact, keeping in the loop. Had he simply just sent an update email such as, hey, Merry Christmas, here's what I've been working on, here are my, challenges, based on the advice you shared with me, here's what, I've done differently these past 6 months. Had he been periodically sending out those emails, he would have done a better job communicating to Leslie that he was ready for that kind of introduction, and Leslie would have felt more comfortable going to bat and being a sponsor for that person. So now we kind of know the context of mentor, sponsor, the whole idea of being a host and not a guest. I'm going to give you some very, very specific action steps and ideas that you can use when it comes to finding mentors. So here's one of the first ones. Ask for the meeting, not the mentor. Here's what I mean by that. Does anybody on the call have like a really good friend? Some people call it a BFF. Think about that person. When you first met them and you were just having lunch, did they go, hey, we should be best friends forever? That would be awkward. You just met that person. There's not enough time or understanding in one meeting to predict that you'll have the bond to be best friends forever. So when you meet a mentor and you ask, or a potential mentor at a conference, and you say to yourself, oh, I want this person to be my mentor, and you ask them right away, you're putting yourself in the same awkward position of making them make a very large commitment without the information. So when you meet someone you think it would be a great mentor, you want to think to yourself, how do I get a meeting with this person? So you want to instead say, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. I'd love to continue the dialogue should a specific question arise. Can I have permission to follow up, maybe for a 15-minute chat or a cup of coffee? Most people will say yes to that because, one, they don't think you're going to follow up, and two, it's a small ask. And as you continue doing these small asks and delivering, you build that relationship where you have the cachet to actually ask for mentorship. So you want to make sure that when you meet a potential mentor, you're not asking them to be your mentor right away, you're asking for the meeting. And I see the questions, but I'll definitely get to the questions in a second. The second thing is you want to make it project-based. Here's what I mean by that. If you were someone who was a potential mentor, what would you say yes to? Someone who said, hey, I want you to mentor me, versus someone who said, hey, I know that you launched a boutique 2 years ago, and I eventually want to launch a boutique one day. I have a 30-day goal to get 3 pieces of my fashion into local boutiques in the Atlanta area. Would you be willing to chat with me about my strategy over coffee 2 times this month? What do you think someone's going to say yes to more? The first answer, the very vague, kind of broad answer, or the second answer? Remember, a mentor is thinking, how can I help you? What do you need from me? How long is it going to take? And what is it about my specific experience and expertise makes this a relevant conversation? So when you make it project-based, you give yourself a much higher chance of getting a mentor. So what I want everyone to think about at the end of this call is, what's a 30-day project? What's a 30-day project that you can approach a mentor with? So if you're a job seeker and you want to get some information about a specific industry, or maybe you want to make contacts in a specific company, a 30-day project could be, okay, I want to have 3 informational lunches in the advertising industry and get, 2 warm contacts. So maybe you reach out to your alumni office, and then you find someone who works for a company you're interested in, or someone who's in that industry, and you say, hey, I'm working on this project in the next 30 days. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me about my strategy? And when they get comfortable with you by the second meeting or third meeting, then you can have the comfort level to say, hey, would you mind sharing your contacts? So you want to definitely make it project-based. This is a really important point. I don't have too much time to cover it today, but one of the things is, this is one of my pet peeves. I notice this a lot with a lot of the folks that we coach, especially ambitious folks. So a lot of times when we reach out to mentors, there's this tendency to want to show them how impressive we are. There's this tendency to want to show them how smart we are. So most people will communicate above this is an iceberg, right? So 1/7 of the actual iceberg is above the surface, 6/7 is below. So above the surface, that's our surface self. That's, this is me, this is my representative. But below that line is how I actually feel, what my actual challenges, my struggles, my anxiety, my fear. And most people stay above the line. What I found to be the most successful is the level of vulnerability in below-the-line conversation. So I've actually said to mentors before, hey, I'm having this business challenge. I honestly, I've thought about this challenge, but I don't know where I'm going, and I think I'm maybe making a mistake. What would you do if you were me in this situation? And I've gotten a much better response just by being candid and honest and being below the line than by trying to spend the time, impressing my mentors. And, I think it's great to share updates when you have wins, but it's also important to be able to communicate below the line and say, hey, here's where my challenges or my struggles are. Kind of like you remember the earlier case scenario where the lady said, what do you think my perceived weakness will be when I apply to this job? If she just focused on all the great things on her resume, she never would have got the idea to do the project to make the book, and she would not have gotten the internship. So you want to think about, how do I actually operate below the line? So this is an interesting, because one of the questions that comes up a lot is, well, what do I say, when I meet this mentor and we're having coffee? So for those who need some structure around this, there's a really cool framework called FORM, and I love it because it's easy to follow. FORM stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, Motivation. So it's from a book called Turn Small Talk into Big Deals. I'll give you an example of how this works. Let's say that you meet, an executive coming out of an elevator, and you've done some research. You're doing a job shadow, and you can say, hey, I heard that you recently came back from China. Is most of your family from there, or is most of your family here in the States? And they might say something like, oh, actually, half of my family is there, half of my family is in the States. If it was me in the scenario, I'd say, wow, that's really interesting. Half of my family is in Haiti, and half of my family is in the States. I actually feel bad because, to be honest with you, I'm longing to go back and visit my family. All of a sudden, instant rapport, instant connection, just because I followed this framework. So if you run out of things to say, and everyone on the call, I'm going to send you guys the slides and also a worksheet to help you think through your 30-day project. But this is a really good framework I found to build rapport and conversations, because you don't want to just have your mentor relationship be just about this person can help me get an internship, get a job. Try to get 2 non-work related facts about them, because it gives you an opportunity to follow up. So I'll give you an example. I had a lady call me one time and say, hey, Bert, I'm having lunch with the head of a really big magazine that I want to work for. What do I say to this person? And I basically told them to ask questions to find out a little bit more about them. She found out that this person was a Jets fan, and she had a 3-year-old niece. And so with those 2 pieces of information, I had her send an email, asking again if a specific question arises, if she had permission to follow up. But also, she sent her an article saying, hey, I found this really cool education on early, learning techniques for pre-kindergartners. Thought you might appreciate it for your niece, Kayla. And so this is an opportunity for you to build relationships. So that's why this area is important. So a lot of people who use Form on me figure out that really quickly that I'm a big runner and I'm training for my first marathon. So I've actually had mentees send me articles and tips about running. So see how that works. So what kind of mentors do you need? I would say that you want to think about, when you leave this call, how do I get a step ahead mentor? Especially folks who are job seekers. How do I get someone who's been working in my industry that I want to work in for 2 or 3 years? Someone with 10 years is great, but someone who's been working in that industry 2 or 3 years, they've recently solved the problem that you're going through now, right? So they have a unique perspective. I had this lady one time who said she couldn't find the ideal mentor, and I said, well, why? She said, well, my ideal mentor is the CEO of Starbucks. So I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I want to start a local coffee shop. And I thought to myself, well, the CEO of Starbucks is actually the worst possible mentor. He hasn't started a local coffee shop in years. He's thinking about how do I get my franchises to Italy and to get the baristas to respect my coffee. So the ideal mentor for her is a step-ahead mentor who opened a coffee shop in a neighboring town 2 to 3 years ago. So that's how you want to think about that. Another type of mentor that you need, I call it a Mufasa mentor. Did y'all see The Lion King? Remember that scene when Simba is talking to Mufasa? He's in the crowd. He's like 30,000 feet above, and he's giving him advice. You need someone who has that same position, right? So someone who's just been through it all, maybe closer to retirement, because one, they're not competing against you. Two, folks at that space generally want to give back, and they can have a global view of your career, 5 years out, 10 years out, that you just can't see because you're looking at everything 3 feet in front of you. And then lastly, you want to get a sponsor. So someone asked a question about getting a sponsor as an entrepreneur. I'm going to take questions in a few minutes, so we'll get to all your questions. But a sponsor, as I mentioned, is someone who's actually at the table who can advocate for you. Entrepreneurs with sponsors, are 7 times likely to get funded and have 3.5 times higher user growth. So now you're seeing a lot of organizations like Techstars, Startup Weekend, Y Combinator, that are literally set up to be incubators with built-in mentorship. Mass Challenge in Boston. I can send you guys if you're interested in some of these entrepreneurship mentor programs. But what's key about all those programs is it's built-in mentorship, but also sponsors. The mentors that they have are so highly connected that a lot of times you start a business and they're introducing you to customers and vendors that it would have taken you 5 to 10 years to get on your own. So you want to think about, how do I get someone who's actually sitting at the table? So just to kind of close things out, I'm going to follow up with all of you by sending you a survey. We'd love to hear what you thought about this presentation, how it could have been improved. But also, I want to give you all a challenge. This is not just about, okay, great, a little bit about mentorship, I'm excited. I'm really generally interested in success stories and you succeeding. And so I'm going to send all of you a gap worksheet that helps you analyze, your give, your ask, your plan. I want all of you to disperse to like the 30-day project. I know there's a lot of job seekers here, so maybe a 30-day project could be related to the industry that you want to eventually work for. And I want you to work on getting, once you complete your gap worksheet, one warm introduction. Because I think sometimes we approach mentorship and we approach people that we don't know. And that can work, and I can give you email scripts for that. But I think my best success has been when I build relationships around the people that I want to mentor me, and I get that warm introduction, because that goes so much further. So that's my challenge to you for 30 days. And so I want to now open it up for questions. And by the way, the best way to stay in contact with me is definitely tweet me at Bert Gervais. I'm really responsive to Twitter, so feel free to, and I'll send all my email information. So I want to open it up to questions. So what are some questions all of you have? Oh, and thank you, Linda. Linda has already has a 30-day project, so I like that. Oh, so one of the questions by Sarah. Oh,
there you go. You got it? Okay, good. I was going to read them to you. There you go.
Okay. So one of the questions by Sarai is, how do you ask personal questions without coming across as nosy? So here's the best way to do it. I call this matching and mirroring. In any networking scenario, you want to match the person. So I gave you 4 different universal areas to build relationships, to build conversation around. So if someone's not really talking about their family, I wouldn't bring it up. I'd wait for them to bring it up. So one great question you can ask that gets people to open up and lets you see how far you can dig deep is, how do you spend most of your time? It's an open-ended question, but a lot of times people won't actually tell you what they do at work. Or if they're a workaholic, they'll say, well, I work, but I'm also doing Thai kickboxing. And you can say, oh, that's really interesting, which is recreation. And you ask about that. Or you can say, what are you most excited about right now? Well, I'm really excited about this initiative at my work, but, I started this mentoring program, at New York Needs You, where we help first-generation college students, and I've got this really great mentee. Oh, tell me about your mentee. So I would say the best way to ask personal questions without coming across as nosy is open-ended questions um, in those areas. So, for example, motivation. Why did you join your firm, or what were you doing before you started at this company? And if you want some sample questions to ask in a mentor, I just wrote an article on Forbes on 10 questions to ask in your mentor meeting. So I can share that with you guys. And I've got like 10 really good examples, but that's a great question, Sarai. Do we have any other questions? Hold on, let me go to chat. Hey, Don, there were some other questions that we had, right? Okay. So one question said, I am already employed. Should my mentor necessarily be in my field? That's an interesting question. I would say you want mentors inside your company, but also outside your company. And they don't necessarily have to be in your field. I think what's important is shared values. You want them to actually be somewhere that you want to be, right? So let's say that you eventually want to transition careers. Or let's say you want to be someone who can manage a career and a personal life. So maybe you're not even reaching out to them for, well, how do I become a better advertising executive? You're just reaching out to them to ask them, how do I become a better and more effective executive? So I don't think your mentor should necessarily be in your field. It really depends on your goal. It depends on your gap plan, right? What is your ask? What's your plan to get there? If you're focused on, getting promoted in your industry, then it's great to have an industry mentor, but I don't think you should limit yourself to just, and I actually encourage you to get mentors outside your industry and also outside your company. Because sometimes they can actually have a view where they can see your blind spots because they're not so indoctrinated in company culture. So we're getting some more questions. Yes, Michaela, I can email you that article. I can include in my email to all of you, I'll include the link to the article. So someone said, how can you transition away from a mentor-mentee relationship that's not providing any new leads without coming across as ungrateful, unappreciative? That's a great question. That's a dicey one because the research shows that 80% of mentor relationships that just drift away where there's not a formal end, it tends to be negatively by one party, the mentor or the mentee. So it's easier in a formal program to have that conversation. Okay, this is how our relationship is going to transition. I think in an informal mentor relationship, I think you hint at it. Great experience talking about it directly. I would say something along the lines of, I really appreciate all the help you've been able to help me with these last 2 years. I'm really excited of what we've accomplished together, and I just really wanted to express gratitude and just maybe kind of have dinner with you to celebrate all of our achievements. So I would have maybe just like a celebration meeting, and in the celebration meeting, kind of have the aura of we've completed something together, without saying our relationship is complete. I would say things like, I'm really happy to transition into a friendship role, and I'm happy of all the things that we've accomplished. I wouldn't necessarily say that, hey, this is not fruitful anymore, and I'm going to get a higher powered mentor. I don't know if I'd go that route, but I think you should have a celebration. We've completed this together, kind of. So Cameron asked how to get in touch with me. Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm going to type my Twitter here, and I'm going to type my email as well. I'm quicker on Twitter. So, but if you're not on it, feel free to email me. Do we have, okay, so Sheila has a question. Oh, she says thank you. Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate you being on this call. So Rhonda said, what is the first step to identifying potential sponsors? So that's a great question. Well, Rhonda, I think it would determine on, first, what are your goals? Because the thing about a sponsor is they're going to put themselves and their reputation on the line for you. So you want to be extremely clear about what a sponsor can do for you and also what you can do for the sponsor. So I think that's step one. Then I would say, well, sponsors tend to be higher levels of organization. So you would want to know, well, where are they, right? So usually associations, so for example, let's say you want to get into, I don't know, marketing. I would look at a marketing association, and I would look at who are the speakers, who are the panelists for an upcoming event. And usually they have the bios, and they'll say they'll have, this person's got 10 years of experience. I was on a panel one time at Ernst & Young for a career transition event, and a lot of the panelists had 10, 15 years of experience. Those are great potential sponsors, right? So I would look at, associations, events, speakers, because they'll give you some background as to the folks who are going to be there. Targeted networking events, and if it's a targeted networking event, I always recommend asking the organizer of the event, saying, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Would you be okay making an introduction? And the best way to do that is to give first. If you see me at a networking event that's targeted, I'm usually the first person there, and I'm volunteering to set up chairs. Why do I do that? Because then the organizer says, wow, this person gave, and we like this person. So when I get a chance to talk with them before it gets busy and say, who do you think I should connect with that's got 10 years of experience, in the training and in the webinar space, they go, yeah, you should meet Mr. Johnson. And I go, thank you. That's a great question. So Flo said, you talk more about job seekers and mentors. What advice would you have for an older person and a person that has been working for many years, a person that needs some direction? Okay, great. So at this level, there's a transition that happens. When you first start, you're really trying to normalize yourself and socialize yourself to company culture, and you're worried about promotions, right? So usually mentorships at the beginning of careers are focused on those two things. How do I get promoted? How do I learn the company culture? Now, when you're later in your career, you usually want to usually want to do two things. One, you want to focus on an observational mentors, because at this point, you really want the 360 assessment of how you're doing and how you can get to the places that you need to go. So you want to get a mentor who has an understanding of leadership and leadership progression in the company. You also want to probably get deeper in. You also want to develop deeper expertise in your field, or change altogether. A lot of times, people in mid-career make the decision of, I want to delve deeper into my field, or I want to do something different. So at this point, I've seen a lot of the people that we've worked with focus on getting mentors in different industries because they want to explore, or they focus on mentors, and also in partnership with coaching programs that give them 360 leadership assessments to identify, what's really going to make them happy in their career. Another thing that I found that folks in mid-career are asking mentors for is they look for a lot of times for work-life balance. So they look for mentors that can help them develop and be more effective in their current role, so they have more work-life balance. I can help you if you can talk through this question a little bit more specifically offline, but definitely feel free to email me. We've got a couple more minutes. If anyone has any, Arlene has a question. As an entrepreneur, I understand the importance of networking. I use LinkedIn as one method. Can you provide one suggestion on how to develop a mentor or mentee relationships through LinkedIn? Absolutely. So LinkedIn has LinkedIn groups. So, for example, two things. As an entrepreneur, you should probably know about the organization called Micro Mentor. They offer a lot of mentoring resources. So let me just type that. Also, LinkedIn groups. So LinkedIn groups, you can find a relevant group. So maybe, Young Entrepreneurs Network or different LinkedIn groups. And I would start answering questions to position myself as a thought leader. And you can actually be ranked in the LinkedIn Influencer Program. And so as you start participating in these discussions, reading people's articles, commenting. So I'll give you an example. I've been the LinkedIn Influencer of the Month for some career development LinkedIn groups. And so when I reach out to folks, I'm not just a random person. They say, hey, Bert, you're the person who commented on my article and really read it and gave me 3 specific points of feedback. Or you're the person that wrote a review on my article. Like I would reach out to someone who wrote an article on a LinkedIn group. I would do a review of their article and say, here are 3 points I got from the article. I'm going to share it with my network. I promise you that person will want to have a conversation with you because, we're egotistical as right, or we want to know what people think. And so that's a great way to give and start building relationships. And as you keep doing that and mining those LinkedIn groups, I would then say, hey, I really appreciate our back and forth. I have some specific questions. Can you do a 15-minute call? So I literally focus on giving, reading the articles, reviewing the articles as a way of giving. I would transition that into a call, and I would just follow the GAP method where I continue looking for ways to give, have a specific ask, and have a plan on how to get there and work with them on my GAP plan. That's my answer for her.
Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in today's event. Bert, do you have any final comments to take us out?
I just want to express my deep gratitude to Don and the rest of the National Urban League team for putting this together. And I honestly generally wish all of you success in your career as job seekers. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you. Please feel free to reach out and to stay connected, and happy mentor hunting.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. We had a great presentation. As Bert mentioned, that we will be following up with everyone with the slides so that you can have them for future usage if you need them, future reference. And be sure to follow us on Facebook. We will have another event next week for those who are looking for tips on their resume. We'll send an email out about that with those details. It'll be same time next week at 12:30. If you have any additional questions for the National Urban League, feel free to contact us at jobsnetwork@nul.org. That's jobs, jobsnetwork@nul.org. Feel free to call the national office if you have additional questions. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.